Welcome everyone to this webinar on defining and embedding a culture of choice across the very diverse organization that is ANDRITZ. My name is Jerome Parisse-Brassens and I am Executive Director at Walking the Talk. Walking the Talk is a global consultancy that focuses on culture transformation. So I have the pleasure today of being joined by 4 core team members of the culture team at ANDRITZ. So let me introduce everyone briefly. First, we've got from Brazil, we've got Fernanda Brunetto. Hi, Fernanda. So
Hello.
Fernanda is Global HRBP for Group Automation and Pulp and Paper Automation and Digitalization, as well as being HR Director for Latin America and the lead for the One ANDRITZ initiative that we're going to be discussing today. I think you've got a lot on your plate, Fernanda. Huh? That's a lot.
Hello.
Sounds daunting. And from Austria, we've got 2 people joining us today. We've got Stephanie Reithofer, hi Stephanie, who is a Global HRBP for the Pulp and Paper Business Unit. And I remember working with Stephanie 4 years ago when we started working with ANDRITZ. And we've also got, from Austria, we've got Jennifer Golob. Hi, Jennifer. So Jennifer is Global Head of People Development. And last but not least, we've got Marjo Valaja from Finland. Hi, Marjo.
Hi.
Marjo, you're Global HRBP for the Pulp Service business. So it's a very international team that I've had the pleasure of working with for over 4 years. And today we're going to be discussing the culture initiative that you're driving at ANDRITZ. Before we do that, I just wanted to remind our audience of what it is that we're talking about when we're discussing culture. At Walking the Talk, we have a definition, a working definition that we use, which is the following. Culture is the patterns of behavior that are encouraged, discouraged, or tolerated by the people and systems over time. So it's all about behaviors, but also the mindsets that drive those behaviors. So today we'll talk a little bit about the behaviors that we're trying to embed at ANDRITZ. And there are 3 big ideas that today we thought we would address. The first one is the need for clarity around the behaviors you want to encourage in the organization. So how to define them and clarify them. The second very big idea is how to bring leaders on the journey. Leaders need to be role models of the culture you want to see. So how do you bring them on the journey? How do you involve them in the culture initiative? And finally, the third element is all about processes. So how do you use your processes to support the culture that you're trying to embed? And Jennifer, there's 2 very important processes and systems really that you've been driving. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We will be taking questions from the audience, but without further ado, I'm just wondering, maybe some of the people that are watching us today do not know who ANDRITZ is. So we're just going to show you a brief video that introduces ANDRITZ. So I'm going to start with you, Stephanie. I've got a question. I believe culture has always been very important for ANDRITZ, but 4 years ago, you decided to increase your focus on culture. Can you tell us why that was?
Yes, you're right. Culture has always been an important element at ANDRITZ, but to tend to this question about the increase in focus 4 years ago, I need to go back a little bit in ANDRITZ history for our participants here. Our company has significantly grown over the past years. Just a ballpark figure, since I joined 11 years ago, our number of employees has almost doubled. So this is what we are talking about. And we have not only grown organically, but also through many acquisitions. And of course, all those new acquisitions, they brought in their own company cultures with them. So we ended up being quite diverse all over the globe. And ultimately, at one point, we said, hey, we want to dive a bit deeper and find the common ground for all of us.
And I believe that this common ground, you started with the strategy, the vision and the mission. Is that right?
Exactly. It all started with our redefining our vision, mission, and strategy. As a group, we wanted to be more one ANDRITZ and not this several different business units. And so we wanted to be seen as one group. And then if you do all of these things with your vision and strategy, then you have to take the next step and also tackle the culture. And this is what we did. And we wanted to look what makes our common ground, what is anyhow our shared behaviors, what makes us successful anyhow together as one group.
And when you're talking about success here, I'm hearing something of a link with the business results, right? At Walking the Talk, we strongly believe in a culture by design, and we strongly believe that the culture of an organization should support the strategy. So it should be the right, a fit for purpose, in other words. So Stephanie, what would you say is sort of the business impacts that you expect with that one ANDRITZ culture that you're describing?
Mm. As you say, if you have a culture, it needs to also suit to the company strategy. We tend to say that the strategy is what we do, and the culture is how we do things and sets a framework for how we do things. And our ANDRITZ culture is very driven by performance, and we are very ambitious. We want to be the leader in technology in all the areas we serve. And also growth, so sustainable, solid growth is a key element in our strategy. So it is not surprising which elements are anchored in our culture, because we have this strong drive for results that we also will see when we talk about which behaviors we have then defined.
Yeah. And I love hearing what I hear, and what I heard from the beginning was really this need for a seamless experience for the customer, right? Across all the different organizations that ANDRITZ has, and your clients are customers of different organizations quite often, huh? Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So how did you, maybe Marjo, if I may ask you that question, how did you clarify at the beginning the culture, right? Because we're talking about behaviors and culture, that would be the one ANDRITZ. So how did you clarify that? What was the process?
Yeah, yes, that was very interesting and a very important part of the project. And as we could see in the video, we are about 30,000 people globally, and like Stephanie mentioned, a very diverse group working in many different business areas in all continents, in about 150 countries, etc. So what we wanted to make sure is that we engage and get input and feedback from people that represent all those areas and businesses. That was the key for the starting point. And so what we decided was to involve our senior leaders. Yeah, that's of course our global talent pool across the company and our global HR network. And altogether, these people represented about 700 people from different roles and organizations. And what we did is that we made a survey with these people. We interviewed some key people and had a few virtual focus groups in order to determine what are our common focus areas that we share as an organization in order to be successful, as Stephanie mentioned, and also to find out what we still need to improve in order to better collaborate and work together. And based on all the input and feedback we gathered during this called design phase, we kind of linked it back to the business targets.
Okay.
And sorry, yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, I like to. So it's what you're describing is a fantastic bottom-up process about listening to everyone in the organization, especially because you're so diverse. But then I'm hearing also linking them to the business targets you were trying to achieve. Yeah. So that's where you met and defined what we called, I think I remember the culture blueprint at the time. And that really led to, four behaviors. We were talking about behaviors before, 4 core behaviors. And I love seeing, if I'm looking at you, Fernanda, Jennifer, Stephanie, and Marjo, behind you, the background, I'm seeing those 4 core behaviors. It's really, it's like a real campaign. So what are they? I think customer focus is the first one, Stephanie, right?
Absolutely. And it is for us also probably the most important one. You could see that also in the video. It is our strengths also, and we built on that first behavior. For us, it means that we actively listen to our customers and take their needs into account when we take our decision. So this is very central. The second core behavior is ownership for performance.
Which is something that is already quite strong in ANDRITZ, I believe, that ownership. I see a lot of it, right?
Absolutely. It's all about stepping up, I would say, that we take the responsibility to deliver results. This is very, very much anchored in our culture. And we say what we do, and we do it without blaming others if something can go wrong at one point. So that's very important. So you are right, the first 2 were very obvious and clear for us and our strength, I would say. And then we had 2 more where we really see potential to grow and to build further on, and that's shared commitment.
Okay.
This is so important because, as I said in the beginning, and Marjo confirmed, we are such a diverse group and we need to collaborate and appear as one group so that we can deliver this seamless customer experience. And finally,
openness, the 4th one. How did that come up and what is it about?
Openness is that we, for example, listen actively to each other, that we share ideas and experience without holding back, and that we show trust in the people we work with in our organization. So we really want to walk our talk. We stole your...
I like to hear that.
Here a bit.
Yes. And what's really interesting in your 4 core behaviors, so it's really about clarifying behaviors, and it's not about coming up with a long list. So here you have defined 4 core behaviors that you really want to see everybody adopt in the organization. And I believe that behind those behaviors, you've actually described what they mean in practice, right? So that we know what openness means. But what I find particularly interesting is that those 4 behaviors, 2 of those have a strong external focus, like the customer focus and ownership for performance, whereas shared commitment and openness are really also have not an internal focus, but really focus on how you work together to really achieve what you need for your customers. So it's really quite balanced. Thank you, Stephanie. I'd like to now ask Fernanda to come forward, if I may. So Fernanda, you're the lead of the One ANDRITZ initiative now. And how did you start? Right, once you had defined those behaviors, what you wanted to see in the culture, practically, what are the steps you took?
Well, we did quite a lot of things in the last 2 years to implement the One ANDRITZ way with the leaders and the teams. but maybe we could highlight 4. First, we got the full commitment from our senior leaders and our CEO, the executive board members, and the director reports. They turned into ambassadors. We also have offered several trainings for leaders in HR, general training. Also, we put together a toolkit for leaders, as you can see, with self-assessment, 360 feedbacks available. And we include workshops, several workshops in global trainings. We have also a very good timing on the implementation of our global people management system, the A-People. So we harmonize several different processes in one global process, and we have the behaviors embedded in the evaluation processes like recruitment and performance. And last but not least, we invested in the communication perspective with an internal campaign. So via articles in our magazine, also conceptual videos, inspiring videos translated in different languages. We also had many templates for e-cards, posters, Teams backgrounds, as you could see here, available so that we could communicate with our teams about One ANDRITZ way in a global manner and also in the local basis.
Okay, and I'm getting a question from someone in the audience, because I understand those initiatives are ongoing. Is that right, Fernanda? So they're not finished, right?
Yes, they for sure are ongoing. Of course, we are going to have any additional, lot of additional actions coming to the future, especially after we had our post survey that has brought interesting insights for us and good perspective to focus 2023 initiatives.
And I've got a question from Claude in the audience who's asking around the COVID, because I think 4 years ago, very rightly so, you had almost 2 years of COVID in the middle of this culture work. What happened? Did it change things? What was the impact?
Well, we finalized our culture blueprint in November 2019, and we communicated the launch of One ANDRITZ way together to a Christmas letter that our CEO is used to send. And then we were completely prepared to start implementation actions whenever then the COVID outbreak starts. So we have defined on purpose that we put on hold. We had so many things to prioritize to take care of the people and the business. We prefer to put a little bit of on hold. And we reconnected the launch of the One ANDRITZ way 1 year afterwards, in the beginning of 2021, together to the implementation and communication of our A-People system, because this was also expressing why we did it as HR, that we really come with this connected. Yeah.
And I'm seeing a few questions coming in, so we'll take questions from the audience in a minute. But before, Fernanda, if you could just say a few words around, I mean, the other idea big idea that I talked about at the beginning was leadership. How do you bring leaders on the journey? And I think you did quite a few things from your executive board all the way to the senior leaders and other leaders in the organization. Could you just summarize for us what actions you took and how you brought them on board?
Sure. First, it's nice to say that we see the leaders in the driving seat to make One ANDRITZ way come true. And we are kind of a fool, the ones who provide the platform and guide and support the leaders to implement it. So we, with the CEO and executive board members, we have them all committed to the behaviors. We help them, of course, to be role models, and also support a lot on taking decisions, business decisions, especially on restructuring processes and organizational structure changes. For you to have an idea, our CEO included One ANDRITZ way as one of the 4 main priorities for the ANDRITZ group, and he communicates to all the audiences in all meetings. He speaks about our strategy. Yeah. With our senior leaders, we have implementation plans in the business organizations, and the global HRBPs, they support them to go to actions adapted to each of the business units. They also are ambassadors, and they participate in our ambassadors meeting, giving feedbacks, also inputs, and sharing success stories to inspire others. Yeah.
And I think that was one of your starting points, right? I mean, you defined the culture, but then you went straight on to working with your leaders so that they could work on being role models, but also being able to work on those behaviors with the different people.
Yes, and in general, all ANDRITZ leaders are being trained and supported by HR to cascade communication and meetings with their teams, especially related to the performance cycle, which is a very key topic here. And just to mention, our Pulse survey.
So I've got a question. So Fernanda, before we go there, there's a question from Stuart in the chat who is about, you're talking about the Pulse. Stuart is asking, how do you measure the progress of developing the culture towards the future state, right? Which is exactly what you're starting to talk about.
Exactly. Thank you for the question. Yeah, we, after 1.5 years in the implementation plan, it was time to start to take the Pulse check. So we have launched the Pulse survey together to the same audience that helped us, the 700 people mentioned by Marjo, exactly to understand how the behaviors were into practice, how they were seeing the behaviors into practice. We could see very interesting priorities, especially related to helping the leaders to be role models in the detailed, the very concrete terms, and also cascading conversations about it with the teams. Yeah.
And I'm going back a little bit to Stephanie. That's going to be a question for you because it's linked to the measurement. Sam from the audience was asking, how will you explain a bit more the 4 behaviors, right? The 4 core behaviors behind, I mean, Stephanie, you described very clearly what they mean, but how did you describe to people actually what they really meant? And this is what the Pulse is about. It's those detailed behaviors. So Stephanie, how did we do that?
Yes. We actually have 2 levels with our behaviors. I talked about the first level, the core behaviors, but each behavior is supported with several detailed anchor behaviors. We wanted to have those 2 levels more or less so that 4 is a number that people can remember quite well. So people can remember 4 core behaviors. And then if they want to work more detailed with them, they can use the anchor behaviors to understand better what each of them means. And so if we have a more detailed work with the leaders or also with the employees, we then strongly focus on the anchor behaviors also.
Okay. And those anchor behaviors are part of the Pulse that you're measuring the progress on. Absolutely. And so we've got another question from Chung Yen, who says, what would be other signals of progress? How are you measuring beyond the Pulse? How are you getting signs from the people in the organization that things are changing? What are some of the signs that help you to keep momentum going? Fernanda, do you want to take that one? I see you nodding.
Yes, I can do that. Well, the most important way that we can see things are progressing is to listen about the success stories. So together to the ambassadors, we have agreed to start to concrete organizing the success stories. And we are launching communication for the next period onwards based on these success stories. In this way, all the leaders that are really being challenged on how to do it, they can understand how the others done, and also the collaboration in how to implement One ANDRITZ way could work very well by inspiring others, by the experience of others. Exactly.
At Walking the Talk, we often talk about not creating legends, but using stories of what people have done. So how have they role modeled the culture and the impact it's had on the business? This is really, really important in building the tipping point for change inside the organization. I'd just like to move now to something different, because yes, we've been talking about behaviors a lot, but it's systems, behaviors, and symbols really that create the culture. So in the systems, we know that the systems underpin how we behave, and you can use systems to reinforce the culture you really want. And what I love about what you've done at ANDRITZ, you've actually used one of the key levers for change, one of the key systems, which is performance management. So I'm really turning to you now, Jennifer. Can you tell us more about performance management and how you've embedded, or you are embedding, because I think you're doing it at the moment, the cultural element, the One ANDRITZ way, into your performance management system?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can say that it was a perfect timing for us, and it was very helpful that we implemented this new global people management system at the same time in ANDRITZ, when we launched our One ANDRITZ Way initiative. And also before Stephanie mentioned it, ANDRITZ is very performance driven. And so it was fantastic and a big step for us when we decided 1.5 years ago that in ANDRITZ performance consists not only of a goal plan, so not only financial and individual goals, it also consists of our One ANDRITZ Way behaviors and competencies. We at ANDRITZ, this performance management system, we call #A performance. And as I said before, these parts, the goal plan, our One ANDRITZ Way core behaviors, and the competencies, all those sections are displayed on the performance form. And they are also evaluated during the performance year. So manager and employee, they're talking about in the conversations in the beginning of the year, when we do the setting of the goals about our One ANDRITZ Way. And also then 2 times during the performance cycle, we have a mid-year discussion. And of course, the end of the year annual discussion, where managers and employee are discussing the One ANDRITZ Way.
And I think it's a learning process for all, right? For the managers, for the employee, how to discuss behaviors in such a session. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it's not easy, but we are making very good progress. And I think I can also say it now already, we are planning and doing always every year trainings on really, how to have meaningful and effective performance conversations. And right now we are also having in the next month coming more of these trainings.
And speaking of training, which is the people development aspect, is for us another big key lever for change in culture. You also drive culture. You include culture in all your training for talent and so on. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Especially this year, so in 2022, we started really to include One ANDRITZ Way in all our global trainings, and we also started and are in a good way for all of our local trainings. For example, we embedded our One ANDRITZ Way in the Global Talent Program, also in the Global Leadership Program, but we also have our One ANDRITZ Way in the Global Project Management programs around the globe. But not only here, we also have, a training platform. We call it the APPS Global Training Platform for Manufacturing, where we also have one session on One ANDRITZ Way. And right now we are also designing an online training for all new employees, but also employees that are already with ANDRITZ, that they can go, through this online training and really learn everything about our One ANDRITZ Way.
So if I may, Jennifer, I don't know if you're going to be able to answer that question, but you were talking about new employees right now. And there's a question from Stuart in the audience that says, has the journey, what you've been doing, impacted the recruitment and hiring process? So
Yes. This was also very, very important that we included our One ANDRITZ Way already during the recruiting, and also we included it in our onboarding process. Yes.
Okay, so I'm really hearing, if I summarize a little bit, you've been working on the behaviors, you've defined very clearly the 4 behaviors you needed to see across the organization. You've brought your leaders on the journey and you're supporting them to role model those behaviors and work with their people on those behaviors, so on the how. But I'm also hearing that, and you're bringing the culture into the training and into the systems, like the performance management system, the recruiting system, all the HR processes and systems to really support people adopting the behaviors. So that's absolutely fantastic. We've got a question actually from Claude, which is maybe Fernanda, if you want to take it. So the question is the following: having done what you've done, if you had to do it again, anything you would do different? So what have you learned in the process around, I suppose, what went well and not so well, or anything you'd do differently? I don't know, Fernanda, is that okay for you to take that one?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Well, I believe we have shared some of the topics that went quite well, like senior leaders and key people participating in the foundation, which turned into commitment for the implementation. Also about the executive board and senior leaders in the driving seat, the topic on perfect timing in implementing our A people. And I would add the simple and pragmatic approach we have with you, Jerome, in walking the talk, to turn a complex topic in a doable action, especially for the people to understand exactly how to contribute in concrete terms. But we have also some challenges. So we have spoken about the pandemic. This, the definition of really holding on was a good one. We understand it would be the best, really, and it was good when we started then to start in a very good, strong way.
Mm-hmm.
But then the very important point we have as a lesson learned is that it's really not so seamless to translate the behaviors into each one's day-to-day practice. And once this also is where the leaders are in, they will not be able to have easily cascading conversations with their teams. So what we have done, for example, we put together a toolkit and we could find this is too complex. And we also could see we needed to strongly help the leaders to understand and to make the bridge. So we are really reviewing some materials, some tools to make the leaders, to have available the leaders tools that facilitates this bridge first at their level, their personal level, and afterwards also to cascade conversations with their teams.
Yeah, this is always I mean, behaviors, it sounds simple, right? But when you have a conversation and drive the behaviors and support the right behaviors in others, it's not as easy as it sounds. Did you have any particular, and that's what happens. I mean, I always say, have you tried to change a behavior when I'm working with people? I say, I've tried to change many behaviors, and even one, sometimes it's hard enough. So we all need the support we can to actually shift our behaviors in the way that is required. There was a question from somebody around resistance. So on that point, did you get any particular resistance on some aspects of the journey?
Well, of course, that in some point of time, right? We, especially the collaboration, sometimes some processes or some way we have in day-to-day life, the systems we have in the current situation could not maybe facilitate so much. So of course, there are some discussions. For example, we have put together global policies for incentives, and this facilitates a little bit on driving goals that could be more shared than in the past, for example. And of course, some topics on interaction between the businesses are also under review. And a lot of business leaders are getting together to really build up solutions or even offers for customers together. And then, of course, this facilitates much more, and this passes the right message to the teams. What does it mean to practice in concrete terms? The shared commitment, for example.
Well, something that we hear a lot when we start working on culture in clients' organization is that people tend to resist a little bit because they can sometimes blame the systems for not enabling them to really adopt the behaviors. It's completely human nature, and I hear that all the time. But what I'm saying is that at ANDRITZ, you have started and you are tackling some of the big systems. But of course, in an organization, there's so many processes and systems, you can't change or you can't realign them all at once. So it does take a little bit of time. And I see that happening. which is great.
Yes, and it's also something that it's important to create the awareness on the leaders that they are in the driving seat, because whenever they think this is an additional task from HR, this will not fly. So of course, in a first moment, we could hear one and another time that, okay, this is an additional task from HR. And then when we really could see our CEO stepping in, putting into it as a priority, then everyone could see this is for real. And a little bit of the feeling of additional tasks is changed by, okay, this is required and expected in my leadership role for all of us, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm just conscious of time, so I think we're going to move on to the last topic. And there's a question that I was going to ask you the following question, Fernanda. I was going to say, do you have any advice, right, that you can give somebody who wants to sort of tackle a project like that in their organization? But there's a question from Paul, who is from Ireland, that says, what advice would you give in putting together the culture team, right? So that's a very specific question around the culture team, which I've got a wonderful culture team, but there's many more people, right, in the organization that are working with you and supporting the work. So what would be the advice you'd give people, including that culture team question?
Yeah, would you like Stephanie to step in, because it was very
you were
much
part of that
on
too.
your responsibility, that part?
Yes, I could say a little bit about the culture team, because of course today it's only the four of us here, but it's by far not our success. It's the organization and the team's efforts that made this really possible. And I can say that we have a truly global team. I mean, our organization requires this also. We cover, I think, all the continents and so many different countries in our core team, and we try to have the One ANDRITZ way explained in all the languages, for example, that we speak in our organization, so that people can feel close to those behaviors, because sometimes having them in English or another foreign language is not the same as having them. So in 2019, when we first started, I think it was the core team was still was 3 people, and then we had the Center of Excellence that Jennifer is now leading, with about, I would say, 10 to 12 other people that were working for this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And any other advice from you, Fernanda?
Yeah, maybe developing from Stephanie. Of course, why we have a core project team is because we then organize things to be discussed with the broader team. So we more or less give speed to the process when we go to a discussion with something in the field, or to even send things in advance and then make definitions together or get inputs towards to the solutions. But to have really a smaller team as a core team helps on coordination. And of course, it reflects the culture we want, which is a One ANDRITZ culture, right? But I believe as additional advice, I would say, make sure your culture plans align with your business strategy at first, as well as that your leaders are aligned and brought in, especially the top management.
Especially, and the CEO in particular, right? Because I've got a question from that's just come in saying, the working with the CEO demonstrating alignment. And I believe, I mean, I know for a fact you've had a change of CEO in the process, but that hasn't stopped anything. If anything, you're still going very strong, right?
Yes. In fact, it was quite interesting, this change, because of course, the executive board was all committed since always, and the new CEO was part of the executive board. And in this transition, we could see a big momentum to take part, because of course, speeches was in place, some really call for action or attention was in place on that change. And our CEO, he really, by himself, he chosen to put One ANDRITZ way in one of the 4 priorities for the ANDRITZ group. And he really spread the word in a very powerful manner. So from that point onwards, we started to see a lot of conversations. Wow, this is for real. This is really something that is expected from all of us. And of course, this is powerful. It's not really an HR initiative. If this is seen only via HR, it's really not going to fly as we want to really have all the leaders in the driving seat. So it's critical to have your senior leaders brought in. And of course, to align the systems, because when the systems are blamed because they are stopping or blocking people to behave, it's like easy for the people to just live like the things are at the moment. And when we really drive people, we guide people via the systems, it's also seamless for everyone to see what is the direction we want people to behave. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you, Fernanda. And I like the business topic that you're talking about. You know, culture is not an HR thing. It's a business, right? It's about how we run the business. It's about the results that we drive in the organization. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
indeed.
Well, we're coming to the end of this. So unless any of the four of you want to say a last few word about something, I'm just going to end up. So I will say thank you first to the audience. Thanks to everyone who's asked questions. We haven't been able to answer all questions. There were too many, but thank you so much. I would like to thank the team. So Marjo, Jennifer, Stephanie, and Fernanda, thank you so much for being here with us today. I would like ANDRITZ to thank ANDRITZ for allowing us to do this and really sharing your wonderful story with everyone. So a very big thank you, and see you soon, everyone.
Thank you. It was a
Bye-bye.
pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.